皆さんこんにちは。私はGabby Sensei です。Hi everybody, it's me, Gabby Sensei. So today we're going to be covering lesson 2, which is about verbs. So I hope everyone looked at their vocabulary carefully so that way they understand what we're talking about and will be able to participate in the activities, even if it is just by practicing yourself. So without further ado, let's begin the lesson. So first we're going to have a quick review of what we learned in lesson 1. Lesson 1 was when we learned about the DKSA rule. As you recall, question words usually begin with D, and they always do in this case in order to follow the rule. So some question words that we came across were doko, which means where, dore, which means which one, dono blank, which means which blank. You can put whatever you want in the blank. Dono pen, dono neko, dono kaban, dono hito. Donna, which means what kind of. Dochi, which means which way. So a question, these are all question words like I mentioned. So doko desu ka means where is it. Denwa wa doko desu ka? Where is the phone? So when you're talking about something that is close to you, the speaker, the word is going to begin with K. And these words are all related, so they come in the pairs. That's why we always list things together as a group, but we're just going to talk about some examples that start with K. So instead of saying doko, where, the answer would be koko, here. See, the words are related. Where? Here. The words are related. You also have kore, which means this one. Kono blank, which means this blank, close to me, the speaker. Konna, this kind of. Or kochi, this way. And when you're talking about something that is close to the person you're speaking to, the word begins with S. So instead of saying doko, where, you can answer soko, there, close to someone else I'm speaking to. So you have doko, koko, soko, sore, which means that one. So you have dore, which one, and you could say kore, this one, or sore, that one, by you, the person I'm speaking to. You have sono blank, sono pen, sono neko, sono kaban, that blank. Sonna, that kind of, or sochi, that way. Finally, when what you're talking about is neither close to you nor this person you're speaking to, then the word begins with the letter A, such as asoko, over there, are, that one over there, ano blank, that blank over there, anna, that kind of blank over there, or achi, that way over there. So this is like the activity we did before, except now the question is, dono pen wa aoi desu ka? So aoi. You might know the word better as ao, ao. That means blue. So we're asking which pen is blue. Dono pen wa aoi desu ka? So your choices would either be kono pen wa aoi desu, sono pen wa aoi desu, or ano pen wa aoi desu. So how would you answer the question if it looked like this? Sono pen wa aoi desu, because the pen is close to someone else you are speaking to. This would be kono pen wa aoi desu, because the blue pen is close to you, the speaker. Sono pen wa aoi desu. That would be sono, because it is close to someone else you are speaking to. Ano pen wa aoi desu. This one would be ano, because it is away from both you and the person you're speaking to. Ano pen wa aoi desu. So the pen didn't move, it's still away from both you and the person you're speaking to, so it's still ano. Ano pen wa aoi desu. Verb, it's what you do. So today we're actually going to be talking about verbs. So verbs are parts of speech that are action words. So here we have this verb wall and it has toss and catch and dribble, jump, groove, play. Those are all action words, right? Those are all things that you can do. But verbs don't have to be just things that are super sporty, actiony verbs. As long as it's something that you can do, it's a verb. So you can sleep. So sleep is also a verb. You can think is a verb. You can speak. And you can even grow. Grow is even a verb. So this is the category of words we're going to be talking about, verbs. And they're really important because you use them all the time in almost every sentence that you use. And so while this is a very difficult subject to talk about, it's one of the most important. So as you could see on your vocabulary list, we have 3 different types of verbs that we're going to be talking about. We have do verbs, u verbs, and irregular verbs. So while we maybe aren't going to be using them in their dictionary form that often right now, it's still really important to know the difference between them because they conjugate differently, which you're going to be explaining shortly. So we have these verbs in their dictionary form, and I will explain what they are. For the do verbs, we have okiru, which means to wake up, neru, to sleep, taberu, to eat, miru, to see or to watch, wasureru, to forget. So the reason these are called do verbs is because they all end in the character nu. So that's pretty easy to know them. So u verbs, on the other hand, all are going to end in the sound u. Although it might not be the character u, it all just ends with the sound. So we have iku, which means to go, kiku, which means to listen or to hear, nomu, which means to drink, hanasu, which means to speak, yomu, to read, or kau, to buy. So like I said, all of these end in the u sound, although it might not be just the u character. Like we have ku, mu, su, mu, u, and there's more possibilities than what are listed here. We also have irregular verbs. Irregular verbs are irregular because they don't follow a pattern. But luckily we only have a few to talk about. We have kuru, which means to come, suru, which means to do. And likewise we have benkyou suru, which means to study. So we're going to talk about conjugation now. So conjugation is something that you have to do when it comes to verbs and just shows how you do things in a different way. So in English, for example, we say I run, you run, she runs, like with an S at the end. That's because we had to conjugate the verb. So in English, we don't conjugate verbs as much. I mean, we conjugate them for person, we conjugate them for like present tense and past tense, but other languages conjugate things more. So previously, we just learned the dictionary form, and that's what you're going to find when you look up the word in a dictionary. But when you use it in a sentence, if you're going to speak politely, we have to learn how to conjugate it to be polite form. The rules for that are you drop the ru of the verb, then you add mas. So what this means is you have a word like taberu, drop the ru so it's tabe, add mas, tabemas. With okiru, you drop the ru, it's oki, then add mas, it's okimasu. Neru, drop the ru, it's ne, add mas, it's nemasu. With miru, drop the ru, it's mi, add the mas, it's mimasu. So if we have this sentence, watashi wa nemasu, so what does that mean? Imi wa nan desu ka? It means I sleep. I sleep. Watashi wa nemasu. So now with u verbs, it's a little more complicated, but I think we're still up for the challenge. So if you remember from your hiragana, we have the vowels in a little bit of a different order. We have a, I, u, e, o. And so, as we know, all of these u verbs are going to end with the u sound. which is right in the middle according to Japanese order. So the first step to changing it to the conjugation is you raise the u to an e, then you add mas. So it's a little bit different. So for iku, you raise the u to an e. So you still keep the K sound, but you raise the u to an E. So now it's iki. Now add mas, ikimasu. Nomu becomes nomi. Now it's nomimasu. Hanasu becomes hanashi. Then hanashimasu. And if you recall, there is no C sound in Japanese. When you learn the S line, it's sa, shi, su, se. So that's why it becomes hanashimasu. Kau becomes kai and becomes kaimasu. So watashi wa ikimasu. You wa nan desu ka? What does this mean? It means I go. That's why we have this kid and he's like, I'm going, itekimasu. Watashi wa ikimasu. I'm going. So we have irregular verbs. Like I mentioned before, they're irregular because they don't follow a pattern. But you just have to memorize them. But that's okay. There are not that many. In fact, there's only two we're going to be talking about. Kuru, which becomes kimasu, and that means to come. And suru becomes shimasu, and that is the to-do verb. You can also create new words by taking a noun and adding the verb suru, such as with benkyou and suru, and that becomes benkyou shimasu. So benkyou by itself just means studies, like I am completing my Japanese studies. And then if you add the verb to do, now you can say to study, benkyou suru, benkyou shimasu. Pikachu wa nani o shimasu ka? What is Pikachu doing? On the top here, we have 3 images of Pikachu doing something that in Japanese is a ru verb. And on the bottom, we have 3 images of Pikachu doing something that is an u verb. So let's start with the ru verbs because they're easier. Recall that how to conjugate a ru verb is you drop the ru, add mas. So the first picture is what? Pikachu wa okimasu. What is Pikachu doing in the second picture? Pikachu wa tabemasu. What is Pikachu doing in the third picture? Pikachu wa nemasu. Now, at the bottom row, we have the u verbs. So remember the rule for conjugating u verbs is you raise the u ending to an e, then add mas. So what is Pikachu doing in the first picture? Pikachu wa hanashimasu. What is Pikachu doing in the second picture? Pikachu wa yomimasu. What is Pikachu doing in the third picture? Pikachu wa nomimasu. Pikachu wa nani o shimasu ka? Why did I have that o? That's kind of weird. We haven't talked about that yet. So this o in Japanese is this hiragana that perhaps you may have seen before and thought, whoa, that's really weird looking and complicated to draw, and I never ever hear anybody use it. So that's because it's primarily used in this situation. The Japanese form that we're using is subject wa something o verb. This is the standard form. So before, when we were just talking about something is something, that was x, y, y des. But now when we're using verbs in a sentence, not just is, we're using other verbs, the form is subject wa something o verb. So if we have a sentence like Pikachu wa ocha o nomimasu, what does this mean? Pikachu wa ocha o nomimasu means Pikachu is drinking tea, or Pikachu drinks tea. Because we have something wa, object o, verb. しかし, if you are using a motion verb like to come or to go, you need a different particle. So that way we can say to. So we have this boy who's going to school. He says, 僕は学校に行きます. And so instead of using o, before it was subject wa something o verb, now it's subject wa some place ni verb. So what about in this situation? 僕とお母さんは図書館に行きます. So let's look at a few scenarios. 友達はテレビを見ます. Subject は something を verb. Friends are watching television, or friends watch television. 男の人は音楽を聴きます. We still have subject は something を verb. The man is listening to music. The man listens to music. 女の人は靴を買います. We still have subject は something を verb. 私は日本語を勉強します. Subject は something を verb. I study Japanese. This one's a little bit different. 女の子はパーティーに来ます. Because remember, if we have a movement verb like 行く or 来る to go or to come, then we have to use ni. Subject は place ni verb. What about this last one? 僕は男の人の名前を忘れます. Even though this seems like a really long sentence, look, it still fits the form that we've been using. It's still subject は something を verb. 男の人, it seems long, but this just means man. So 男 is male and 人 is person, so it's a male person. And if it helps, just think of this as one squished down word. So this isn't any longer than most things that we've been doing. This is no different than like watashi no namae or sensei no namae. It's just a little bit longer because the word for man is just kind of long. So 僕は男の人の名前を忘れます. Now we're going to see if using the subject wa something o verb form, if we can make our own sentences. So first we have Keroro Gunso, otherwise just known as Keroro. And he is going to be paired with hamburger. That's right. And so our verb is going to be taberu. Taberu, which as we know is a ru verb. So our ru verbs, you drop the ru, add mas. So what would you do to use these three parts to make a sentence? Keroro wa hamburger o tabemasu. Drop the ru, add mas. Now we have Luffy. Luffy from One Piece. So Luffy is going to be in the sentence with Nihongo. And what verb is going to be here? Hanasu. Hanasu, to speak. As we know, hanasu is an u verb. So the rule is what? To raise to e, then add mas. So what would the sentence be? Luffy wa Nihongo o hanashimasu. Hanashimasu, because you raise the u to an e, then add mas. Last but not least, we have Sailor Moon. If you don't know Sailor Moon, she fights crime in the name of the moon. She's just your average teenager who also happens to be a superhero at night. So Sailor Moon. And we've got Tennisu. which is tennis. And the verb, suru, the to-do verb. So remember, suru is an irregular verb, so you just have to remember how to conjugate it. So how would you make this sentence? 세이라 문와 테니스をします. Because suru is an irregular verb, you just have to remember that suru becomes shimasu. So Sailor Moon does tennis, or Sailor Moon plays tennis. So now let's move on and talk about positive or negative forms of the verbs. So as we can see, this boy up here on the left, he likes broccoli. He's smiling and he's going to eat the broccoli. So you could say broccoli o tabemasu. He eats broccoli. Broccoli o tabemasu. But in the next picture, he doesn't eat that. He doesn't like those carrots and those beans. So he doesn't like that. So we want to learn how to say doesn't eat. We want to learn the negative form of the verb. It's actually quite simple. To change a verb in its positive mas form to its negative form, meaning does not verb, simply change mas to masen. So if we have nomimasu, meaning to drink, so like watashi wa nomimasu, I drink, you just change the mas to masen. Nomimasen. Now I don't drink. Watashi wa nomimasen, I don't drink that. No. So okimasu, to wake up, I wake up. You're like, no, I sleep in, I don't wake up. Okimasen. Shimasu, you'd be like, tennis shimasu, I do tennis. But now you're going to say, no, I don't do tennis. So you change the mas to masen. Shimasen, I don't do it. Yomimasu, oh yes, I read. I like hon o yomimasu, I read a book. Nope, hon o yomimasen, I do not read a book. I do not read. Yomimasen. Just change the mas to masen. So let's look at some examples in a sentence. First, we've got this picture of a fruit and it's got a check mark by it, so obviously fruit is good, but then the vegetables below it, vegetables are dame, we don't like vegetables. So let's explain this in Japanese. Watashi wa kudamono o tabemasu. This is still following the same form that we've been doing. Subject wa, something o, verb. Watashi wa kudamono o tabemasu. Demo, which means but, demo, watashi wa yasai o tabemasen. It's still the same form. It's still subject wa, something o, verb. But now we've just changed mas to masen. And now it means I do not eat. What about now? Watashi wa Harry Potter o yomimasu. It's still the subject wa, something o, verb form. How do we make this negative? Demo, watashi wa War and Peace o yomimasen. War and Peace is a really, really big book that it's not a lot of fun to read. So, watashi wa War and Peace o yomimasen. It's still subject wa, something o, verb. But now we've just changed the mas to masen to make it negative. Let's try it with some questions. The question here we have for this picture, onna no hito wa eigo o hanashimasu ka? Onna no hito wa eigo o hanashimasu ka? Remember, to make a sentence a question, all you have to do is add ka to the end of it. So if you just said, onna no hito wa eigo o hanashimasu, that means the woman speaks English. But because we have a ka, it's now a question. So does the woman speak English? So the woman here is saying, je pense que nous avons une bonne amitié. That's not English. No, that's not. So the answer to this question is, iie, onna no hito wa eigo o hanashimasen. As you can see, it's still the exact same subject wa, something o, verb. It's still exactly the same. In fact, it's almost word for word. The only difference is that instead of saying hanashimasu, we say hanashimasen. フランス語を話します. She's speaking French. The woman speaks French. You could also say 女の人はフランス語を話します. But as we know from before, that if the subject is already known, you don't have to repeat it. So if you're talking about 女の人 and you just keep saying 女の人は女の人は女の人は女の人は, it's very obvious what you're talking about. So you don't have to say it this time. But if you want to make it easier, you can still say 女の人はフランス語を話します. The next question is 今女の人は寝ますか? This is like that first form that we did. There's no object because as we know, 寝る, 寝ます means to sleep. You don't sleep an object. You can't say, I'm sleeping something. So, like before, when we had the Pikachu examples, this is just 女の人は寝ます. 女の人は寝ますか? We have a picture and the lady's stretching and she's opening her curtains and she's saying, Ohayo. So no, she's not sleeping. So the answer is いえ、女の人は寝ません. 女の人は寝ません. 今起きます. Now she is waking up. 起きます. 男の子はゲームをしますか? 男の子はゲームをしますか? This is still the subject wa, something o, verb. Just add ka for a question. So no, this boy isn't playing a game. He's not doing a game. He's actually studying. So we have to answer いえ、男の子はゲームをしません. いつも勉強します. いつも is a time word meaning always. He's always studying. どれですか? If you remember from before, どれ was a question word that we talked about, meaning which one. So you have to decide which one of these pictures will be the following sentence. テレビゲームをします. Is it 1, 2, or 3? テレビゲームをします. That would be ni. Because picture 1, they're watching a movie, and picture 3, they're in a movie theater, but only number 2 is someone playing a video game. どれですか? 食べません. 食べません. 1, 2, or 3. That would be 3. Because in picture 1, the monkey is eating, and in picture 2, so is the boy. But we want 食べません, the negative form. So we are going to choose 3 because the girl's not eating, she's actually drinking. 本を読みます. Now we have an object in here. That would be 1 because the boy is reading a book. 本を読みます. This one's a trickier one. This one is 学校に行きません. 学校に行きません. So this one's a bit tricky. This one is actually 2 and 3 because 学校, as we know, means school, and we said 行きません. So the negative choice. So number 2 is obvious because he's not going anywhere. That guy's sleeping in a hammock. But number 3, they're not going to school. They're going to a library. So that still counts as not going to school. So now we have another 会話練習. So this is the same picture from lesson 1. We still have Emily, and she's in Japan with her friend Yumi, and they're at the omiyage stand looking for a souvenir from Japan. So what she's holding in her hand here, that's a tanuki, which we talked about last time. And over here, this Eiffel Tower looking thing, that's the Tokyo Tower, which is a broadcasting tower in Japan, in Tokyo, that looks a lot like the Eiffel Tower, but it's red and white. And it's a very important landmark in Tokyo. So here we have a little statue for it. And Next, we have the maneki neko, which you'll see a lot in stores. Not just stores in Japan, but in a lot of Asian-themed stores in America too, because they often are said to bring good luck into stores and bring in customers and bring in money. And finally, we have a Japanese-style fan, the sensu. So for our dialogue, we're going to have Yumi and Emily talking, and while dialogues are very difficult, we're going to have a guide here so that way you can know what you want to say. So first we're going to have Yumi say, will you buy that blank? And you can put whatever you want in the blank, any of these objects. So, how do we make a question? You just say the sentence regularly and add ka at the end. So you need to know the verb to buy, so you just need to have buy that blank and then put ka at the end. So along with that, how do we say that? Because we are talking about something that is close to her, the person she's speaking to. So is it going to start with a D, K, S, or A? It's close to the person she's speaking to. So it's going to start with an S. Now, so we have this phrase, it's that blank, that blank. So we need to know which one was, which blank, this blank, that blank over there. That was the dono, kono, sono, ano group. So which one of those starts with an S? Sono. So we'll be using sono blank. So then Emily's going to ask, how much is it? That was a question word that we very briefly mentioned last time. So if you do not remember, you should look it up. Yumi will answer, I will look. So that means you have to use the verb look. And then she will answer, it is blank number of dollars. As I've explained before, 1 yen is approximately equal to 1 US cent, which means that anything over $1 is already 100 yen. So if you don't know how to count your numbers in the hundreds and thousands and 10,000s, then it's a good thing to just stick in dollars. So that's what we're going to do. Dollar is just doru. And Emily will answer, well then, I won't buy it. Well then is something from our vocabulary list, so please look it up. And we're going to use the verb to buy, but we're going to use it in the negative form. So please pause the video and take some time to either work with yourself or work with the partner to figure out a plausible dialogue. I have a volunteer here who's going to help us complete the dialogue.
Hello.
Right. I will be Yumi and she will be Emily. エミリーはその招き猫を買いますか？
いくらですか？
私は見ます。50ドルです。
じゃあ買いません。
So your dialogue should have gone something like that. Lastly, I thought that we would cover some of the time words that we can use in our sentence to be more descriptive. So here at the top on the left-hand side, we have yoku, which means often. And next to it we have tokidoki, which means sometimes. So often, it happens a lot, so it's in big writing because it's a very strong word. And tokidoki means sometimes. On the right-hand side, we have amari, which is rarely, so, not so often. And then we have zen, which means never, and it's written in big writings to emphasize how it never happens. So the reasons these are divided into two is because with the first two words, the positive words, often and sometimes, we use the positive mas ending on verbs. So, 私は時々リンゴを食べます. So this is still the subject wa, something o, verb form, but we've just inserted a time word. You could also insert it later. 私はリンゴを時々食べます. They have slightly different implications, but you can use it either way. So the other two, the more negative sounding ones, rarely and never are used with the negative form of the verb. So we can say something like 私は全然リンゴを食べません. So as you can see, if we don't include the time words, the sentences are pretty much the same. It's still 私はリンゴを and the verb 食べる, but now this time we're using the negative form 食べません because we're using the time word never, 全然. And likewise, you can move the 全然 around. You could say 私はリンゴを全然食べません, which have slightly different implications, but for our purposes, it means the same thing. So now we're going to do an activity with questions, and you need to answer either yes, which would be はい, or no, which would be いいえ. And I'm going to be asking how often you do something, and you need to answer yes, I often do it, or I do it sometimes, or no, I rarely do it, or no, I never do it. So remember, the ones under the はい category use the positive form of the verb, and the ones under the いいえ category use the negative form of the verb. So I will ask the question, then give a pause for you to try to answer yourself, but then I will answer the question the way I would do it, just so you can see an example. But try to do this on your own, because in lesson 3, this will be as part of the review. 日本語を勉強しますか?日本語を勉強しますか?はい。日本語をよく勉強します. Yes, I study Japanese often because I'm a Japanese teacher. So, はい、私はよく日本語を勉強します. 野菜を食べますか?野菜を食べますか?はい、私は野菜をよく食べます。私は野菜をよく食べます. I eat vegetables a lot because I love vegetables and they're very healthy for you. テレビゲームをしますか?テレビゲームをしますか? The answer for me? いいえ、私はあんまりテレビゲームをしません。私はテレビゲームをあんまりしません. I don't play video games very often. I'm too busy doing other things like teaching Japanese. 友達と映画を見ますか?友達と映画を見ますか?はい。私は時々友達と映画を見ます。はい、私は友達と映画を時々見ます. Could say it either way. Yes, I sometimes go to the movies with friends. Not often enough to use よく, but 時々. テニスをしますか?テニスをしますか?はい、私は時々テニスをします。はい、私はテニスを時々します. Yes, I do play tennis sometimes. I used to play tennis a lot when I was younger, so I would use よく, but now it's just sometimes. But I believe that a lot of people probably don't play tennis very often. It's not a very popular sport. So if you say no, you'd use いいえ、あんまりしません or いいえ、あんまり or いいえ、全然しません. パーティーに行きますか?パーティーに行きますか?いいえ、私はあんまりパーティーに行きません。いいえ、私はパーティーにあんまり行きません. I very rarely go to parties. A lot of adults don't throw parties that often, so I don't go very often. Do you ever go to parties? What would your answer be? 図書館に行きますか?図書館に行きますか?はい、私はよく図書館に行きます。はい、私は図書館によく行きます。Yes, I go to the library a lot. I go to the library nearly every week because I love the library so much. I love getting books and movies from the library. 本を読みますか?本を読みますか?はい、私はよく本を読みます。はい、私は本をよく読みます。Yes, I read books often. I love books. Books are wonderful. コーラを飲みますか?コーラを飲みますか?はい、私はよくコーラを飲みます。はい、私はよくコーラを飲みます。Yes, I drink cola or pop a lot. オレンジジュースを飲みますか?オレンジジュースを飲みますか?いいえ、私は全然オレンジジュースを飲みません。いいえ、私はオレンジジュースを全然飲みません。Nope, I never drink orange juice. I do not like orange juice. So that's the first answer you've heard me say 全然。音楽を聴きますか?音楽を聴きますか?はい、私はよく音楽を聴きます。はい、私は音楽をよく聴きます。Yes, I listen to music quite often. I love listening to music, especially Japanese music. Now we're going to talk about the cultural aspect of our lesson today. So, 日本の文化, Japanese culture. So here we have a picture on the left of a woman wearing a kimono, which just translates to kimono because that's a word that we didn't have in English and we didn't have a thing for it in English, so we just used the Japanese word. And there's also matsuri that we're going to be talking about, which are festivals. So we're talking about festivals and holidays in Japan. So as you can see, this is a kimono. Most people recognize kimono on women because they're very pretty and very colorful and have lots of patterns. And here's an example of when you'd wear a kimono. This is the hatsumode, which is the coming of age ceremony. Girls absolutely love it because they get to wear their kimono in January when they turn 20. And it's the year that they officially become adults. So kimono are very recognizable on women because they're very colorful and have beautiful patterns with like flowers and nature or just geometric designs on them. And men, they don't have to have just black or blue kimono. They can have other colors too, especially in the past they used to, but they are pretty plain in comparison to the women's. And kimono have many layers, so they're actually very complicated to put on. And they also can get to be pretty expensive, so most people don't own that many, maybe just a few, and they only wear them for special occasions nowadays, such as the hatsumode, or for like attending weddings, and maybe some older people would use them to go to other kinds of ceremonies. But most of the time, people just wear Western clothes. There's also the yukata, which is very similar to a kimono, as you could see. It's a little bit different, which we'll talk about. And then we have the other word matsuri again, which is the festivals in Japan. So yukata are slightly different than kimono, the main difference being that they're worn in summer because they're a much thinner material. So the picture unfortunately had to remain small because it got blurry as I made it bigger, but you can sort of see that kimono definitely looks more formal and there's more layers to it, and so it's kind of complicated to put on. Yukata are a bit easier and they're lightweight and cotton, and people love to wear them in the summer for things like the matsuri. And so there are many matsuri all year long, but a lot of them occur in the summer. And so girls will often wear the yukata during the events, and sometimes guys will as well, although that's not as common. So some traditional holidays and festivals in Japan include Hina Matsuri, which is the Dolls Festival on March 3rd, where they line up and display dolls. It's quite interesting. And then the next picture we have, those are carp flags, and they are always flown on Kodomo no Hi, so Children's Day, which is every May 5th, and they always have samurai armor. They used to decorate everything because samurai are strong and they're protective, and it's supposed to be protecting children and celebrating them. And then one of my favorite Japanese holidays is the Tanabata Matsuri, which is the Star Festival that often occurs July 7th, but it can fall on other days as well. And what's really prominent about this festival is that people write their wishes on colorful pieces of paper and tie them to bamboo stalks. And at the bottom here we have two pictures from Obon, which is a celebration to honor dead ancestors, and it always occurs at night. While a lot of the other festivals are all day long, Obon is always celebrated at night, and there are a lot of traditions with lighting lanterns and sometimes releasing lanterns up into the air, and people will leave food out for their dead ancestors' spirits to eat, and they will go to temples, and they will do the obondori, which is a special kind of dance to honor the dead. Finally, I have the Shichiko-san Festival, the 753-year-old festival. And we have this little girl here. She's showing that she's 5 years old, and she's dressed up, and she's going to the shrine. And it's just kind of to celebrate that, you are alive and you've made it to 3 or 5 or 7 years old. And that occurs November 15th. So this is when Gebi Sensei went to Japan, and I was there in the summer, so this was during the Tanabata Matsuri. So here are some pictures I've taken, which include me in yukata, and it was difficult to put on, and I don't think I could do it by myself without help from someone else. But there were lots of delicious stands in the road there's crepes and there's candy apples and chocolate covered bananas, but there's also food as well, not just sweets. And there's lots of games where you can win prizes. And at the bottom, I'm showing a friend of mine tying a wish to the bamboo tree. And at the very bottom on the right, we have a yukata festival or yukata contest for little girls. We have little girls on the stage in their yukata and showing off. And as you can see, there's some people in the crowd who wear yukata, but many people still wear regular clothes as well. The next slide is going to be of Obon, and a video should be playing immediately. So I won't speak. So these are the pictures that I took from an Obon celebration in a very small village. So in a lot of places like Tokyo, the whole celebration becomes very, very big. But in this little town, there were still a lot of people, and we had many different people doing the obondori down the street, as you saw in the film, and there were lanterns lit everywhere to represent the deceased ancestors, and we went to the shrine, and there were still shops and performances going around the little village. 今日の J-POP は Crystal K の恋に落ちたらです。So, although we're not going to be watching this music video here on this video lesson today, please 見てください. Please go watch it because it's a very fun song by a very nice singer. So I hope everyone was able to understand the new lesson about Japanese verbs. If you have any questions, first try to go back through both the vocabulary list and this video and see if you can try again, because we will be reviewing this briefly in lesson 3, But if you are having trouble with verbs, then it's going to be very difficult to continue on with the next lesson because we'll be continuing by learning 2 new important verbs as well as some placement words, which are actually postpositions. So, I look forward to seeing you again next time. So, また来週ね. See you next week.